Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am joined by the fantastic Adam Bassett. How are you, Adam?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. You released a book recently. Congratulations.
Oh my God, I did. I did.
You did. Could
Yeah,
you tell us a bit about it and what readers can expect?
Digital Extremities just came out 2 weeks ago, and it is a short story collection of near future science fiction. It's got a lot of influence from literary fiction as well in here. Everything is like very kind of grounded. People are dealing with issues of loss and family and rent. So stuff that isn't too far fetched from what we go through now, just with some memory altering technology and stuff like that. It's been really fun. It's been out, like I said, about 2 weeks now. Things are going
Yeah,
well. I've gotten some amazing feedback from those who've read it, and I've got a stack of copies that I need to sign over there uh,
nice.
on the desk that I'm still figuring out the logistics for distributing and everything. But they're going out to some friends and family very soon. So yeah, it's been a good time.
How did it feel to sign your first book? That first copy that
Um,
came in. Have you done
I
that yet?
didn't I didn't know what to write. I felt like I should add something in addition to my just writing my name down.
Right.
And I was trying to decide between like multiple phrases and statements, none of which really matter to the book. I just trying to like personalize it for the person I was giving it to. And I couldn't pick, so I just wrote all of them down. um, which I don't think
That's
was right
awesome.
either. I'm gonna have to figure that out for later.
It's my perspective is it's whatever you felt inspired to write.
Yeah, no, I know he'll be fine with it.
Yeah.
It was just one of those moments where it's like, "Oh, I have to write something now."
Ooh. Yeah, I think I've seen some authors where they pick a line or a theme from their book and they write that as
Yeah.
the quote.
It's
Others are
tough
just
though with
like,
8 different short stories because
mm,
there are repeated themes, but there's no, like it's tough to say if there's one central, idea or theme to it all
right,
because it does kind of meander a little bit.
right.
Um, I don't stick to one thing.
I wonder if you could find like one of your favorite lines in the
Yeah,
book
I
and
think
maybe
that
use
might be
that.
what I have to do.
Yeah. To make it your signature there.
Mhm.
We do have a few people watching with us. Ryan, welcome. Good to see you. He says, "Hello, friends. Congrats on the release, Adam." We have
Thank
Cinna,
you so much.
welcome. And Chris Navo, good to see you all. Thanks for joining us, folks. So
Yeah, thanks for catching it.
yeah, absolutely. If you have questions for Adam, pop them in the chat. In the meantime, we're just gonna have a good old fashioned chat, and we're gonna talk about a few things because not only are you an author, you also are a map maker.
Mhm.
You work with Campfire. I feel like we have a few things we need to delve into today.
Yeah, it's been hard to talk about everything that people wanna talk about in these kinds of shows lately.
We'll do our best. We'll take that as a
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah.
So, first things first, I always like to kick off with what do you want your readers to walk away with after diving into digital extremities?
Um, I had somebody describe, during the ARC reviews, describe the setting as dystopian, but I don't think that's quite, what I was trying to create. Um, Not to say that they're wrong, like, there's definitely some
Mm.
dystopian stuff going on in these stories, but I definitely want to balance that out a little bit with these moments of, the family getting a chance to have dinner together, or,
Mm,
somebody doing something selfless to help somebody else. Um, basically, like, even though things are bad, doesn't mean that they have to be. It doesn't mean that they always are. It doesn't mean that you can't find some light amongst the darkness.
Mm,
And so, you know, a lot of cyberpunk is this like colorful dystopia. And what happens when you take that and put it out in the country or put it into a remote location? And that's kind of the whole conceit of these short stories. Um, and yeah, I think like if you leave with anything, it's that things are complicated and things are sometimes not very good or don't turn out the way you want. That doesn't mean it doesn't lead to something good,
right.
or that something good isn't the inverse of that. Something good isn't without problems. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I was always very interested in striking some kind of balance between those two ends of the coin, I guess.
So, how was it for you then trying to capture a bit of hopefulness and striving for better in those, let's say, downtrodden
Mhm.
moments in life?
I mean, me as a writer, I tend to just do the depressing thing all the time. So it was definitely a challenge to basically like bring some of the I don't know, I was inspired at the time by like cozy stories, like cozy fantasy,
Oh,
cozy
yeah.
mystery and stuff. These are not cozy stories, I will throw that out there. I accidentally told one person that they were like inspired by cozy a little bit too strongly.
Oh, no.
And so like they still enjoyed it, but definitely got the wrong impression. So they're not
Different
cozy, but
expectation.
yeah. But you know, there were some of those inspirations that definitely helped me try and find moments where I could sort of let the characters just enjoy the moment at whatever they were doing.
Mm,
Find something in whatever situation they were in. For one example that I loved was there's in the very first story, a character is going through this really difficult moment of loss. And
mm.
things begin to sort of improve. And they go to a grocery store and they like don't know which bottle of soy sauce to pick up because they all look the same. But it
Right,
felt good to be able to pick something and just like have a
right.
little bit of use, like pointless agency, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
small wins.
exactly, exactly. And so,
Yeah.
like, they might be as small as that, but you know, having something, and then of course like coming back and making a meal and all that kind of stuff where like there is this difficult thing going on in the background as well, but you have a couple of scenes here and there to sort of lighten things up and show like we're not just wallowing in it, we're trying to move on, we're trying to actively do something. um, at some point, uh, I'd written about four of the stories,
Mm,
um, and I realized a lot, like there were moments like this, but a lot of them all had very dour endings. They were
right.
very sort of, the thing that we wanted to happen didn't happen, which I'm
Okay.
okay with. But it got to a certain point where I was like, I don't know that I can like end the collection on its ending like this. I don't know that I want them all to be like this. And so there were a couple toward the end where I was writing the final couple stories, where I was like, I need to like focus on allowing myself to write something that won't just be depressing.
Right.
So to answer your question, it was difficult, but I think
Okay.
we got there. Um, and I'm trying to like take that into the future with new projects where it's like, you know,
Okay.
this is like this is not necessarily the way to always add these moments of levity and good in the world, but like take from some of the ways that I applied it in these stories and like focus on the ways other authors are doing it that I'm reading right now.
Right.
And yeah, try and just not be so depressing.
Well, it's different to what you are typically writing, like you said, and I'm really curious because you talk about, just the extreme of emotions there with depression and versus that hopeful nature.
Mhm.
as a writer, when you're going in and you're writing these depressing stories, do you emotionally detach, or do you feel like you have to lean into the emotions in order to capture exactly what you're trying to portray to the readers?
I mean, I think it depends.
Okay.
I I would say I'm a little bit more detached during the writing part because
Mm,
I think that I sort of need to be almost to think about the plot in like a way that makes sense to me. Um, like I I want to write plots that actually make sense. Like there's not a
right.
whole lot of Deus ex machina. There's not a whole lot of well, Danny forgot about the Iron Fleet. Um,
Loopholes and
yeah, yeah. So like I'm trying to think like very logically about these things
Mm,
without forgetting like who the characters are and stuff. Um, but then in rewriting or editing, there's definitely a lot of like trying to put myself in the character's shoes and
right.
empathize with them. And like there were whole endings in this collection that completely changed because I had written the original version where like there was one in particular sort of halfway through. It was supposed to be a tragedy, and it was kind of the beginning of when technology became much more prevalent in the story because
Mm,
it moves through time. So in the beginning, it's a little bit less technological, and by the end, it looks like a cyberpunk book. Um,
fascinating.
so this was kind of like the midpoint where I wanted to introduce things like cyberspace and some of the technology that we're going to see later, like some of it's cosmetic, for example, like sort of in between tattoos and glowing tattoos, we've got like these
Mm,
glowing lights that kind of get strung under your skin. Because
yeah.
a lot of technological advancement is how do we make things pretty.
Yes,
Um,
that's true too.
yeah.
Aesthetically
Um,
pleasing.
so kind of like during editing and rewriting that particular story, and also kind of with that same mindset of wanting to not just end things on a depressing note, um, that changed where it got like this little epilogue where after the tragedy that I intended happens, we see the main character continue on and we sort of
Mm,
see how she deals with that. And I'm going to kind of leave it there so as not to
okay.
spoil anything. But you do get
Yeah,
a glimpse of basically like, how do we deal with this thing that happened?
absolutely. It's one of those things that can be I feel like authors can take one of 2 routes, or, well, I'm sure there's more routes, but either leave it to the reader's
Mhm.
imagination and cut to black, or actually try and explore how someone would handle their circumstances,
Yeah, and
and
I definitely lean toward letting the reader deal with it
okay.
basically,
Yeah.
but, frequently I have in the past gotten comments like, "Well, what happened?" And so
Right.
I'm trying to,
How dare you leave it
go
there.
yeah, exactly, so I'm trying to go back the other direction, maybe not all the way, but,
Right.
like, here and there where it makes sense to do so.
Fair enough, yeah. And, we have Derek in the chat with us. Hello, welcome, as well as Cinna has a question for you. What made you decide upon an anthology for your first publication?
Um, so this actually isn't my first publication. It's my first publication in about 8 years.
Yeah.
We won't get into the old stuff too much. I'm happy to focus on what is going on right now,
Mm,
but that was also a short story collection. Um,
okay.
these are just kind of, I don't know. I have trouble with novels.
Okay.
I have trouble with like really long stories that require you to be
Mm,
immersed in them for so long, and these really like long-term setup and payoff things. Like I do have a novel that I want to write. I would
mm,
love to get back to it at some point in the near future, but for the moment, short stories just make more sense to me. Like I don't know, they click in my head easier. Um, and I like the way they kind of can come together. Like digital extremities, everything takes place in the same world. They don't necessarily interact with each other, but you can see like echoes of one story into the next sometimes. things. So, for example, one story takes place near Antarctica, and his job is to basically take ice that's on ships coming from the southern continent and to basically move that onto different ships, which go into the rest of the world. And that is basically how a lot of fresh water is being supplied, uh, with the sort of um, inclination being that other freshwater sources are not so great right now. Um, so that is all happening. And then in multiple other stories later on, you hear about people drinking premium Antarctic water or something. Like, it's just like little flashes of things like that. But it is all in this connected world, and they all are kind of like existing together, even if they don't personally cross paths most of the time. That probably comes from some of the stories that I read in college. I've actually got a few
Okay.
here. A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan,
Okay.
which is was one of the first short story collections that I read that had all of these like intertwining characters. Like, I once made, I don't think it's in this book, but I once made like a flow chart of how all the characters connected, because you'll have like the first character is the point of view in the first story, and then she's like the assistant to the point of view in the second story, and then she's like the mother to a child who is the point of view in the end of the book somewhere.
Hmm.
And this is totally unrelated, but I think you'll get a kick out of this. um, Egan in this collection plays with format a lot, which is another fun thing that I like about short story collections.
Oh, yes. I've seen that before.
And a lot of these are like third person limited, some are first person, one is second person, because you're like the person is high basically the entire time. And so he's
Okay.
having like an out of body experience.
Yeah.
And so the second person really works very well for that, actually.
Hmm.
And chapter 12 is a PowerPoint.
Oh my god.
And you can just flip through that.
No. I'm having flashbacks to work now.
Yeah.
That okay, so I have to ask based on your own reading experience of that, how was it for you reading it as, that format in a PowerPoint?
Oh, it's weird.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
Like, all of the things you're thinking are correct.
Right.
But it is a fun story. It doesn't take too long to read because there's like 12 words a page.
Right.
And it's it's really interesting because it's like from this daughter's point of view, who is observing the kind of friction between her brother and her father, who like are not seeing eye to eye.
Okay.
And this is like how she's processing it, is by creating this slide deck.
Right.
It's a
Oh,
really cool
interesting.
story. It's just told in a kind of weird way.
Yeah. I'm trying to imagine it, and I think I would just need to read it because
Yeah.
yeah, it's so
It's one I would definitely recommend, but I think you like,
hmm,
I think it works best as part of the whole collection. Like, if you were to just
right,
skip that one, I don't think it would like have quite the same, because like I said, like a lot of the characters that you meet toward the second half of that book, you've already crossed paths with at least in the first half, because they're so
right.
like all over the place.
It connects in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. And we have a few others here with us. JCM Byrne, congratulations on the release,
Thank you.
Adam.
Thank you.
We have Tori Talks, hello, and Andrews Wizardly Reads. Look at that. Just as I was about to move on, Tim shows up too.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for showing up.
Thank you for being here, everyone. So, um, with that being the case, then, in terms of your setting being, I would guess near future to further future, I think is what it is,
Yes, it's the end of
2089?
this century and up to the middle of the next century.
Okay. So what was your favorite part about exploring the different technological ages in your stories as you go through them? Because
Hmm.
you go through, I'm guessing about 100 years
Close to
or
it. It's like
close to it.
80, maybe.
Okay.
Um, I think my favorite part was somewhere in the middle, kind of like what I was talking about before, where like we're introducing the typical cyberpunk concepts as like
Mhm.
this new thing that is new to the world, and
Yeah.
then also you can sort of see like it's not like all the cybernetics and like the technology is not super sleek yet.
Mm.
It's you can still sort of see these vestiges of 21st century stuff going on.
The
Um,
flaws and learning curves.
yeah, yeah, and like things don't always work super well. I think that like that period in particular was really fun to figure out because it's like I can't just do a sci-fi, but I also
Mm.
can't just do like modern day plus. Like,
Yeah.
what is the balance there?
Right.
And all of that happened to be set mostly within rural Ontario, which
Oh,
is
interesting.
yeah, which is just like a fun, little setting to put all this stuff in because it's like also you have to consider it's a small, not very highly populated tourist town, and like what
Okay.
would they reasonably have access to?
Yes.
Big thing that happens is the main characters have to like leave and drive like 2 hours away to get some stuff that they can only get at like bigger cities, and the closest one is pretty far away.
Yep, I
Um,
feel that.
yeah, no, I grew up in rural spaces too, so
Yeah.
like uh, I mean that was part of the appeal of this whole collection was you know I love cyberpunk stories, but I've never seen
Mm,
them in places where I've grown up. So what does that look like?
okay. Yeah, 'cause it living in isolated or very rural
Mhm.
towns is a whole other level of survival.
Yeah,
As
for sure.
so I need to know for personal reasons because Ontario is my home province. Pardon me. Why Ontario?
Um, I'm gonna be completely honest. I was for that particular story just looking for a
Mm.
rural place, and I
Okay.
liked the look of the lakes around Wawa.
Ah,
It was
gotcha.
just such a cool looking location and like far enough away where I could have these really beautiful scenes of the wilderness, uh,
Mm,
kind of alongside all this technology. And not too far away where I couldn't have them drive to go get something. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I think that's mostly what it boiled down to.
okay.
Um, Other locations were a little more personal, like
Mm.
I also included Hemingford, Quebec, which is a place that
Oh,
I've been to a couple of times. It's not too far from where I grew up in New York.
oh,
So
nice.
yeah, there were a few places like either where I've lived, or near where I've been.
Gotcha. Alright, I'm with Tim on that, that's fair, it's beautiful areas.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your writing, because I know you said you kinda wanna focus on your writing, this book here, and you started writing, 8 or so years ago. But I am curious about what you've learned about yourself as an author over the period of time that you've been writing.
That's a tough one. um, I've learned, in part, to just kind of go with what feels right for that particular story.
Okay.
A lot of that time between the first publication 8 years ago and this one, um, I was working on stuff that wasn't working. Um,
Mm,
doesn't mean I won't go back to it at some point, but like there's a certain point where you just need to put something down for a while and come back to it later. Like there's
yeah.
a novel that I'm really interested in working on, which is historical fantasy, probably a standalone, and I really love the idea, but I was like writing it and rewriting it. I think I was on like the fourth version, and like even that I wasn't super pleased with. I didn't really
Gotcha.
know where I was going. Like there was a rough plan, but the further that I was into it, the less I was sure of it. And this happened like every single time. And part of this comes back to like I'm just not a good novelist. I am better with short stories, but um, you know I kept trying it, and it sort of eventually came to the conclusion, like, if I'm going to get anything out there, I need to sort of like focus on this side project of mine that I put on the back burner for so many years, which of course became digital extremities. Um, and I think, yeah, that's kind of a big lesson of like, don't try and force something if it's not working. Try and change it up. Try and put it back and put it down and come back to it later. Like, do like, don't just keep ramming your head into a wall.
Good on you for recognizing that, because I know it must be hard, because in that stage or in that state of writing and trying to get it to work, you probably go
Mhm.
through quite a bit of tunnel vision
Oh,
as
like, I
well.
mean, that took me like that particular project, I probably was just trying it in different ways for a solid 2 years.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a long time.
yeah,
Yeah.
and, like, there's a lot still there that I think I can come back to, and there was a lot I did a
Mm.
lot of research that I can still use. I actually just picked up a couple of books at a museum locally, which I think I can use for that project whenever I get time to come back to it. That's probably
Nice.
gonna be in, like, 2 or 3 years at this point, but
Take your time with it, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Go with go with
it'll
it.
happen whenever it happens.
There, I love to hear the no stress, no pressure
Mhm.
tactic, because I'm sure you could drive yourself nuts with that and
Yeah,
trying to put pressure
that's
on
another thing
yourself.
I'm trying to work on as well is, like, you know, how to be consistent and,
Mm,
uh, not take forever with the thing because I've historically done that as well, is just, I'm working on this thing and I'm gonna always be working on it.
right.
So, like, have deadlines, but also allow myself to fail them. Um, I'm still, I don't know what that looks like yet. Maybe I'm already doing it. Maybe I need to improve it. I don't know, but yeah, we're figuring it out.
There you go. It's all an experiment.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out. Even I'm sure writing is very similar, trying to figure out how you write versus all the advice you've been given,
Yeah, and
because
like,
everyone's different.
especially considering every project is different. Like, what
Yeah.
worked for digital extremities uh, is not necessarily what will work for the next thing. I'm working on a novella right
Mm,
now, and that is like extremely detailed plan as far as like I am usually able to do, which is not the case for most of the stories in digital extremities. A lot
right.
of those were kind of like figure it out as you go, and then once you have the concept, rewrite it to make it better, um,
Gotcha.
which you know isn't what I'm doing now. I'm working on a nonfiction book, which has been a completely different path where I'm like gathering research and reaching out to contacts who are giving me feedback about different things as well, and like how do we incorporate all that. Yeah, so like it's multiple different beasts.
I can't imagine. So, well, let's segue into that, because you are also a map designer,
Mhm.
and all of us fantasy nerds love our maps. I think we can all agree to that. So I'm really curious, how did you get into designing maps?
um, I don't know. I I've always loved maps. Yeah, I remember when I was younger and working on like this old fantasy project that never saw the light of day. I had a watercolor book that was like
Okay.
big,
Yep.
and I would go and just draw the map in it, and then I would draw it again, and I would change a little bit, and I would
Nice.
draw it again, and soon, like, this, 30, 40-page watercolor book was just the same map over and over with slight adjustments. So I got into digital map creation, which was a lot
Yes.
easier, and, uh, you know, just kind of mess with my own stuff for a long time. I had a couple
Right.
of friends reach out to me who were interested in having me do theirs, and that was not something I anticipated, but sure, why not?
Yeah.
Um,
Start
and
somewhere, right?
yeah, exactly. And so like that kind of led into me thinking like, oh, maybe I can do like this thing on the side, just sort of when I have time.
Mm.
And I got a couple new clients, and now I've got a couple of people who have published their books with my maps in it, which is super cool.
That
Um,
yeah.
yeah. And I also designed, just to bring us back to here a little bit, I guess. As soon as I go to show the example, I can't find it. There it
No
is.
worries.
All of the all the chapters and digital extremities have a little map at the top. This
Oh,
is
that's awesome.
a map of Wawa,
So you put
and
smaller, like, maps of each area in the short stories right at
yes,
the header. That's awesome.
yep. There's full
Nice.
versions of all those up on Campfire as well, with like full color and more detail and everything. Um, yeah, those are fun to make.
Yeah, so alright, well, that leads me into your next project, which is you are actually working on a book for authors on map making and world building. Can you how did this come to be? And
Also a great question. So if I'm going to be completely honest, it's strategic for the most part
Yeah, fair.
because I don't have a lot of books to offer right now. It's basically just digital extremities. I'm working on a novella as well right now, like I said. Um, and I've got some plans for stuff beyond that, possibly, but I don't quite know what that's going to look like.
Mm,
Um, I would like to go to some events moving forward in like 2025 if everything goes according to plan. And I want to be able to offer more and something different to people who are there.
right.
And I know a lot of authors go to that event. So, what can I offer them that, you know, might be a little bit different, might be useful? Um, and the map design book just kind of was like the natural answer to that question.
Mm.
Because I've been doing some map design here and there for a few years now. Like I said, a few of them have gotten published. People keep telling me that they're good, so okay, I guess. And
Take the compliment.
yeah, yeah. So I started drafting a little something for Campfire's blog. They
Mm,
asked me to write a couple of articles, the first of which are beginning to come out now.
very nice.
So you can
Congrats.
go read those for free if you're interested in kind of like some of the broad strokes. But I sort of took those and some of what I had learned as doing map design and uh, began to sort of just gather more information. So like, how do we build on these questions? How do we um, try and give people something that they can use for their map design, but also just
Mm,
like people who are writing prose and trying to world build and do something interesting with their setting. And so there's like large portions of the book which are talking about like the different way creatures might be impacted by the way that the isolation of an island or
right.
the forest canopy or something. Um, and trying to bring in people who are uh, you know really knowledgeable about this stuff as well. Like I've brought in a couple of people such as Ellen Bayan, who
Mhm.
is publishing the Wingspan of Treason. You might have seen running around.
Oh,
She's done her own maps for that book, and they're absolutely
yes.
gorgeous.
Yes.
Um,
I know which one you're talking about now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I brought them in to talk about a few things. I brought in Jack Shepard, who does some maps as well. We brought in, I just got some comments from Isaac Stewart, who does all of Brandon Sanderson's maps.
Nice.
So trying, like, I am not the most knowledgeable person about this stuff, but I'm able to at least do some research, give my own thoughts, and bring in a bunch of other talented people who can offer something as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it came about. Was I wanted to offer something that was valuable to people, so that was more than just my little science fiction book, which is a little bit niche,
Yeah.
um, and actually give something to people that might be able to help them in their stories. And one thing led to another, and now it's like, well, like this is a real project now. Like I have
Yeah.
just sent over the first section of it to a local college professor who happens to have studied both geology and history.
Oh,
So
nice.
he's like the perfect reference. It was so funny. I was talking to him the other day, and he was trying to talk to me about speculative fiction and how it is a way for people to conduct like literary analysis and learn about the world and stuff. And
Mm.
he's like trying to remember Tolkien's name so bad.
Oh, no.
He's just sitting there. He's like, "Ah, he's that
Yeah.
one guy. He's done like with the elves or something." Like, oh man, you're perfect for this.
Yes, yes. That's a huge project to undertake. Lots of different people you're bringing in, which is really exciting to hear too. I am really curious because, for myself, I've chatted with a lot of authors, and something that's come up a few times is when they go to look at hiring someone for maps, or they're looking at that process. I've seen some authors who've done it themselves. I am really curious, just from your own experience, what you can share. What is the most common fumble you see when authors are trying to create their world or their map that goes with the world, that can be, I guess, avoided early on? If there's any advice you have in regards to that.
Hmm. So just like generally,
Yeah, like what's a
first
common,
first glance at a map, this thing would jump out at me as like something that's not right.
yeah, like one of the beginner mistakes, if you will, if someone's doing
Um,
this for their first try?
this is a very visual design thing,
Mm,
but I think um, I think one of the biggest things that jumps out at me is like the typography,
okay.
because you need to be able to read it.
Yes. Kind of
If
important.
Yeah, and there's only so many things you can do. Usually these maps are black and white,
Mm,
save printing costs and everything. So you can't do a whole lot with color, but you can play with size. You can play with the kerning. You can play with any outlines, and uh, you know, you have to take into consideration the size of the page this is going to go on. Like on a digital map, you can zoom in as much as you want, you can make it whatever size you want, but at the end of the day, if this is going into a book, what size is that page going to be? What
mm,
are the like trim margins and everything? And you have to try and keep these text sizes above 9 point, but really you want to kind of be closer to 10 or 11 at a minimum, just
mhm.
because the way printing works. Um, and of course, have the labels next to the thing that they're labeling. Make sure they're far enough apart so that you don't confuse them. There's a whole bunch of like quick tips that you can do to sort of avoid problems like that. And yeah, that's probably one of the most immediate things that jumps out at me.
Yeah.
The like I don't know if the layout of your world makes sense or not before I've read the book.
Mm,
If it looks uh you know if it looks weird and boxy, and like all the
mm.
mountains are at 90-degree angles for some reason, or like mountains form mountain ranges, they don't create single just points jutting out of the ground. And a
Right.
lot of like fantasy, that's kind of a big trope, is just like this weird mountain jumping out of the plains.
Yeah.
um so like at a glance I would say that's wrong, but I don't know if there's like magic or technology that might have
Right.
made that happen. Maybe it makes sense in your story.
Mm.
So the geology of it maybe looks wrong on the surface, but just because of the nature of speculative fiction, there's always a part of me that's like, but maybe I'm wrong.
Right. Creative liberties, right? That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah. And
where
that's
things.
been a weird part of this book, especially because there's a long section on like geography and how these different like parts of the land and bodies of water form based on what we know about
Mm,
Earth. Not going too deep in it, but like enough to the point where you can maybe correct some mistakes you would have made otherwise.
right.
Like that mountain thing. And then like almost at every point, I'm also at the end of these sections, I'm like, but by the way, if you have earthbenders, everything I said could be invalidated.
Yes. Dang, those earthbenders changing the
Yeah.
landscape. Yeah, making mountains in random places. Um, so I am really curious then. Well, I'm actually gonna go back to what you just said too, because with fantasy authors, I know I've talked to some where they're like, I'm afraid to make my map because I didn't really think about where my characters were going when I was telling the story. So I'm afraid when I actually try and go and track it, that I'm not gonna have a workable map.
Mhm.
If that happens to an author, what would you say is the first place they should start when they're trying to figure out their map, but they didn't really think about a map when they were
Yeah,
writing the
I would
story?
say draft it out anyway, so that
Mm.
you can identify what the problem spots are.
Right, okay.
Um, because if you don't know what those are, you can't fix them.
Fair.
Then I don't know. It depends on the problem.
Right.
So if we're talking about like, we went to the mountain and not the mountain range,
Mm,
and we described it as like this single thing, we can retcon that. Like there's loopholes for a lot of stuff, even in just like basic geology and nature. So like I mentioned, like the single mountain in a plain is geologically not really a thing,
mm.
but if it's a volcano that is now dormant, that makes complete sense.
Oh, okay.
So like,
There's too many options. Well, lots of options.
yeah, so like there's usually some kind of exception or like something that you can kind of like fudge a little bit.
Right.
It's tough to say what that's going to be without knowing what your actual problem is. Like, is there a large body of water somewhere that it doesn't seem like there would be? I don't know. Maybe it's a desert oasis or something that just happened to have like rain that week or something, and it won't for the rest of the year. Like
Right.
it does still rain in deserts. I don't know. Um,
Wizards
so
forming clouds and stuff, you
yeah,
never
exactly.
know.
And again, like wizards can screw everything up. So um, have a wizard in your story that you can just kind of retcon everything with. I guess is the takeaway here.
Write them into book 2 if you've already written book 1.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So I am curious. I imagine just as there's different forms of styles to art, are there different forms of styles to maps? And if
Oh,
so, do you
absolutely.
have a favorite?
Yeah, my favorite for whatever reason it has become those like survey maps from the 1700s and 1800s when people
Nice.
are like just discovering the new world. And especially like when the coastline is really detailed and the rest beyond it is like blank because they've only gone up the rivers and stuff.
Right.
I think that style is just so fun for some reason. If you go to my website and look at the maps that are there, I think like half of them are all just that style.
Nice.
Thanks in part to a friend of mine who keeps reaching out to me to do maps and also likes that style.
Perfect.
So it's worked out so far pretty well. Um, I'm also a little bit like of a sucker for like those 3D kind of like angled maps. They kind of have that like curve to them. Um,
Oh, yes, I
like
know
those
which ones
isomet I
you're
think
talking
they're
about.
isometric, and like you get every single tree really drawn in detail and like this, mountains and everything. Um, I really like those, and I think it's in part because I'm really bad at drawing them. It's one of those like, oh, that's so impressive because I cannot do it.
Right. I love that you appreciate it to that degree too. So with that being the case then, when you're looking at sitting down to design a map, how long are you looking at from start to
It
finish?
it depends on the map.
Right.
Um, there was one I did somewhat recently of a lake for a friend of mine who was using it for I believe it was a D&D campaign.
Okay.
And it was just like a lake, some towns, a couple of mountain ranges,
Right.
and some islands within that lake. The That probably took me, I don't know, maybe like 8-ish hours.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not
Decent amount of
100.
time.
Yeah. I mean, it took a couple of sessions of like sitting down and drawing out the coastlines. But like once those were down, it wasn't too bad. There wasn't a whole lot of detail beyond the coastlines because it was again one of those maps where it's like, we haven't discovered everything yet. So there's a lot of blank space. There's a lot of like kind of sketchy stuff. So once the coastlines were down, just putting in the places and naming them, and then putting in like a title or something, getting a scale the way that he liked. Um, yeah.
Very nice. Okay. Well, the world building and map design book is, do you have an ETA on when people can check that out? Or,
2025.
okay.
It's beyond that. I'm not sure yet because it still needs to be edited. I still am having,
Yeah.
like I said, I have a professor friend of mine who is reviewing at least part of it. Hopefully, he'll have time to get to all of it. And I still have to just do a final pass on a couple of sections as well. So,
Right.
plus
Yeah.
all the images.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Yes.
yeah, so it's going to be a minute.
That's fair.
But
But
I'm hoping by mid 2025, roughly.
sounds good. So, with that, we're gonna move on then into Campfire, because your day job is with Campfire. Is that right?
Yes, I am the UX and UI designer.
So, for people who are watching now and later who might not be familiar with what Campfire is, can you give us a little intro to the platform?
Yeah, so it's a lot of things. On one side, it is a tool for writers who want to improve their stories, who are writing them, who are editing them, who just want a place to store all of the information about their setting. You can use it as like a world guide and then go write somewhere else. I know some people who do that as well. Or you can write with us.
Mm,
The other side of it is the reading side, which we just launched earlier this year, our new reading app. You can download that
nice.
on iOS and Android. And if you want to go publish something on it, all you have to do is sign up with a free account and you upload your EPUB. And that's pretty much it. You can, if you want, also create some extra content in Campfire and bundle that with it or sell it as well. Um, that could be things like character profiles, interactive maps,
Mm,
custom fantasy calendars. You can make location information about like all the places your characters visit, all kinds of stuff like that. And then, of course, readers who are enjoying your story get a chance to go and see those things as well. You can hide some of it behind certain chapters. So if a significant character that you don't want to spoil is only revealed in chapter 3, you can hide the character profile for them until they finish reading chapter 3.
mm,
So there's kind of like a unlocking system as you go, which you can use or not use to whatever degree you would like. Um, and yeah, it's been super fun. I've been working on that for a while
yeah.
now, and we're trying to give readers a really great experience. We've had a
Mm,
couple of people a little while ago who said like uh, we didn't actually have this at the time. I think we might in the future soon, but you couldn't like put an EPUB file into the app and just download it.
right.
And we had a couple people asking to do that because they were like, we want to read on here instead of on Kindle. Um,
Okay.
so that was
Yeah.
super cool. I think we might be adding that in the coming months. I'm not 100% sure. Still figuring out what 2025 looks like.
Nice.
But we had that side of the coin, but also on
Mm,
the writer side of the coin, trying to really help people there as well. We're offering writers 80% royalties on whatever gets sold. And there's no exclusivity, so you can publish with us and with anybody else. The only hitch in that is you can't publish with KU and us because of
mm.
Amazon's rules with that. But yeah, no, it's been super fun. We actually, I think, what day is it? Tomorrow, October 8th, we are launching a special edition of um, the Tea Princess Chronicles, which is the series by Casey Blair, the cozy fantasy thing.
Oh, nice.
She's bundled all of her short fiction within that series, along with a whole bunch of new illustrations and behind the scenes details about the world. Maps, there's like 20 character profiles, there's 2 maps,
Wow.
there's a bunch of location info. She has 5 magic systems apparently, which is wild.
My gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And we have like full illustrations depicting all those magic systems, all those the locations and stuff. So that's going out tomorrow. If you're a fan of her work, you can go on Campfire and see all the behind the scenes stuff about it.
Okay, I'm gonna try and get a link for all of these things so I can put them in the description below for anyone who's interested too. But I am curious for in terms of your experience working at Campfire, but then also writing yourself. How have the two collided, so to speak? How has the two been together?
Yeah, I mean, generally, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
Typically, you do want the person designing a product to be interested in the thing that you are making.
that is a
Um,
very important point.
yeah, I mean, that's not always the case. There are a lot of like
Yeah,
design houses which go contract to contract, and will do whatever is in front of them and just do the research and do the design. Um, it being kind of just in one space like this, just designing for Campfire and making stuff that I would theoretically use as a writer.
mm,
It does make it easier to be a little sympathetic to like what writers would like from this tool, for example. But
right.
also, I have to take a step back sometimes and talk with other writers and see what they
Mm,
would like out of this thing, because my way of doing things is not the only way of doing things.
yeah,
And I have to remind myself of that from time to time. And we go out and do like user testing, or I will just like send messages to people that I know work differently than me. Like
right.
when we made the fantasy calendar tool that I mentioned, I am not the kind of person who's going to be making calendars. So even though like I am really into writing and I'm really into like world building and stuff, are people I know who are even more into it than me, who have their own calendars and express time in different ways. And so when I was building that, one of the first things that I did was I went to those people and I was like, tell me everything about this calendar that you made. And a lot of what I learned from that went into the calendar module. So like, for example, one person told me that they have alternating weeks where one week is 5 days, one week is 7 days, and so on.
Oh,
And so I was like, all right, well, that's a feature that we're going to need. It's really unique. And to say that we have it is going to satisfy like, X number of people who can't get it somewhere else, theoretically.
yeah.
And so, there was a lot of research in that particular tool, for example, trying to make it work with a whole bunch of different kinds of calendars. It's not
Mm,
perfect. It really only works with solar calendars at the moment. Lunar calendars are a little bit tough. Solar lunar calendars are a little bit tough right now.
right.
But it gets that one part down, and we always have the opportunity. If people are enjoying it, if people really want to add more to it, we can go back to it. Like that's kind of the beauty of it all, is
Mm,
we update it like once a month. We're constantly iterating on something. Actually, in like 2 or 3 months, I'm not entirely sure. We have a big update coming to the manuscript module, which is going to give people a bunch of new planning tools and a bunch of stuff they've been asking for within like the writing portion. And we've got
okay.
a bunch of fun stuff planned for next year that we're still talking about a little bit, but I think we're going to have a lot of exciting stuff for the reader side as well coming very soon.
That is exciting. I've heard of Campfire in passing, but mainly as a tool for authors, so I am
Mhm.
really interested to see that it's also a platform for readers because as a
Yeah,
reader and
that's.
reviewer, I take notes, I track what
Mhm.
happens in books so that I can write a proper review, so I'm gonna have to take a look at that too.
Yeah, that's been the big struggle for us, is because we've been writing for so long, like a writing
Mm.
platform for so long, and we still are one, but
Yeah.
to now be this place where it's like, "No, no, you can publish with us too.
Yeah.
You can read stuff. You don't have to write anything with us, and you can just come and hang out and, like, have a good time, and we've got all these cozy fantasy books, and we're getting all this, like, special editions that we're working with
Yeah.
some authors on, and like there's some cool stuff here, and that has been a very difficult message for us to share with people, just
Mm.
because of the nature of like how readers work. I know everyone is so
Yeah.
ingrained in whatever they've found that they already like. It's tough to cut through that noise, but
Yeah.
I think we're definitely getting there now with some of these
Mhm.
special editions and just like steadily over time, more and more authors come in. The more authors who come in and share their books on Campfire and tell their audiences that the book is on Campfire, the more readers come in, and it becomes a cyclical thing.
Yes, yeah, getting the word of mouth out, and like you said, it's difficult because even for myself as a reader, I have a Kindle,
Mhm.
right? And that's pretty well locked to Amazon.
Yeah.
As if I were to go to Indigo and do their Kobo. It's
Mhm.
a e-reader, but it's locked with Indigo and their services and their website and their platform. So it's difficult to break out into other platforms if I don't have a separate
Yeah.
device, right?
Yeah, we have, you can get it on your phone, you can get it on like
Mhm.
your Apple or Windows tablet. I think it works on e-ink tablets as well. I'm pretty sure a
Oh,
coworker of
interesting.
mine got it on one of those.
Okay.
So it's on like a lot of places, but you're absolutely right. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a platform like dedicated to, like, if you have a device dedicated to a platform, it's obviously not going to work very well on those.
No, and I mean, the platforms also don't make it easy if you
Oh,
want
yeah,
to
like,
bring
everything
s
is about, getting an audience and holding on to them as tightly as possible, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what everybody does,
Yeah.
and so it's like, that's kinda why I mentioned earlier, like, it's so difficult to get people to convert over to a new thing,
Mm.
even if it's doing something really well, between the word of mouth difficulty and just,
Yeah.
"I'm already using this thing that I like, why would I use something new?" And, like, I totally am sympathetic to that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like been an interesting problem and one, like I said, I think we're finding our way through with these like special editions, which are just so much fun to see come together with all this like custom art and everything. Like getting to be a part of that is really fun.
I love it. I love it. So, there's 2 comments here I wanna, bring up, but first I wanna say hello to B.A. Turner, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So Senna here is asking, I could publish short stories there, poetry potentially?
Yes, I would recommend you put it together in like a collection of some kind.
Treat it
Uh,
like a book.
yeah, like I would say treat it like a single book, and then share that. Just because the way that we have to format things so that you can read the book as well as like all those bonus things that I was talking about before that you can potentially add. Um, there's a fair number of menus.
Right.
So yeah, so like the format of very short fiction and poems and stories and stuff, it works just fine. But I definitely would recommend, you know, compiling it all together just for like
Yeah.
ease of reading.
So, yeah, don't treat it like a blog post, treat it like an actual published book and put it together.
Yep.
And, Derek here, says, "I've heard about this, but I wasn't sure how it works." So this leads me into a question, essentially, where is the best place? Is there tutorials people can
Mhm.
learn how to use it? Is it on YouTube? Is it the website itself the best place to go?
Yeah, so I would say the best place to go is we have a bunch of written tutorials on our blog. It's on Campfire. You just go to the Learn section, and there's a bunch of tutorials listed there. You
Mm,
can sort by publishing tutorials if you would like, and we've got a bunch of like general primers of like how to publish. We've also got more detailed things like how to set up a pre-order, how
right.
to like reveal your extras at the right time. So there's a bunch of stuff all there. The written ones we are able to update and keep the most accurate, the easiest. We do have a video tutorial as well on YouTube, but it was made a while ago and it's a little bit out of date. Now that I'm thinking about it, I
Okay.
might actually go delist it because it might cause more confusion
Right,
at
'cause
this
it's
point than help.
that's fair. I will say though, that is a nice thing to hear because it shows that they're making steady progress with the updates and
Yeah.
design and keeping current.
Yeah, like one big change we did recently was we were previously using our in-house manuscript module, and we were turning that into an ebook, and we had like our own in-house uh, version of all that stuff.
Right.
But now we have made it a lot easier on everyone, including ourselves, and we are just accepting EPUB files. And so you no longer have to jump through hoops to figure all this stuff out. You just upload your EPUB file like a normal person. I don't know why we didn't do that in the first place. I think for some reason I was told that we couldn't. I don't know, but
Okay.
yeah. So we've made it a lot simpler recently, but that of course means the old video tutorial is not quite right anymore. So I would say definitely go to the written tutorials, and of course, like I'm sure my info will be on this video somewhere. Just reach out to me if you want. Like I'm happy to help out, and at the very least, direct you to the right place.
Absolutely. And if after we chat here too, if you have any specific links you want added in the description, I can always update that as
Sure.
well over time. But we are reaching the 1 hour mark, so I will open it to the live chat if they have any final questions. But before those come through, I do have to ask reviewer to reviewer, because you are also a book reviewer on FanFi Addict.
Yeah.
I gotta know, how has your reviewing experience impacted your storytelling?
It's been good in the fact that uh, I have been reading more this year,
Nice.
and reading is good. That's why I started reviewing books. It wasn't because I thought my opinions are better than yours. It's because I just wanted to read more, and I know that when I
Mm,
am doing something for somebody else, so in my head, when I'm reading a book, I am providing a review for somebody who maybe someone will see it, and then someone will buy their book, and I'm helping out that
yeah.
author. So, like in my warped sense of reality, like I need that sort of motivation in order to actually get something done and actually read. And it's been very helpful in that regard. Um,
Nice.
so, and of course, like all of that comes back to like, in writing even some of the stories for Digital Extremities, there were some books that I had read which I hadn't necessarily intended to, or like, I just was paying more attention when I was reading them because I was going to review it. And those really helped to inspire like little moments or like turns of phrase or like a scene here and there, like,
Nice.
nothing major, but like, oh, this scene isn't quite working. It's like, oh, well, this really worked really well. And like this other thing that I read, let me go look at that again. Um, so yeah, I don't think there's any like single specific way that it's really helped.
Mm,
Definitely just like in general, I have been much more well read this year, which is not saying a lot. Like last year I moved across the country and I got very tired and I started focusing on work and writing this book, and I think I read like 2 books. So it was a very low hurdle to get over, but I still got over
you
it.
still read 2 books.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think this year I'm at or close to 10 at the moment, which like I know for a
Nice.
lot of people is not much, but obviously,
Everyone starts somewhere, right? It
yeah,
it
yeah,
starts,
like
numbers start somewhere.
it's been a big improvement from last year.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I am curious. I have a few kind of questions in this scope. So first of all, in terms of tackling a review, what are your key points, aspects that you try to focus on to do justice to the book, to the story that you read? Because that's always been my focus: is how can I do
Mhm.
justice to what I just read and say more than book good read, because that is a problem. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's difficult because you know I think it's going to change depending on what the book is and what its goals are.
Yeah.
Like so, I think one thing that I try and do a lot is try to imagine, you know, is this book working for me? And then ask why. And if it's
Mm,
not working in some particular way, try and figure out like who do I think it would be good for.
yeah.
So, there was one book that I read. a little while ago, which like I personally kind of graded against the writing style, but the
Okay.
plot was really interesting. A lot of the action scenes were really cool. And I went and like read other reviews of that book, and they all like glowing appraisal. So I'm like, I
Mm.
think it's just not like there's something about this that is just not quite for me.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see like, especially people coming into fantasy for the first time, I think they would have really loved it, because I think part of what I had trouble with was things felt like over explained, almost
Mm.
as if like, you know, I had to be beat over the head with information to remember something,
Right.
which like is a little dramatic, but
I know what
that's
you mean, though.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like it didn't work as well as I would have liked, but
Mm.
throughout like the entire review, I'm trying to like say like I think this is really good for somebody who is trying to get back into fantasy, who is new to it, who
Right.
doesn't really care about this stuff and really just loves a kick-ass plot. Uh,
Yeah.
and like likewise, if I really do love something, uh, again, try and figure out why, and if there's any reason someone else wouldn't have that opinion, like kind of
Yeah.
pull back a little bit and be like, I loved it because it was weird, but it was weird. And if you're not up for like, I don't have it on hand, but there was a short story collection I read which like went very into the occult and like
Oh,
very
right.
intentionally just had strange stories where things
Yeah.
didn't make sense and stuff just happened because it did, and you just have to deal with it. Um,
Right.
and I thought that was just a very fun collection, but at the same time, I'm like, I know a ton of people who would hate this.
Right, yeah. That, like, fever dream
Yeah,
of a story where, it's just like you walk away going, what did I read?"
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, interesting, okay. I appreciate that, thank you. Because as a reviewer, I know it's an interesting curve to learn
Mhm.
how to articulate why someone or who would enjoy a book,
Yeah,
and
and
whether or
and
not it's for
whenever
them.
and whenever, like, I guess, like, whenever something feels off or if I'm not confident in something, but, like, I'll just try and say my thoughts on it as honestly as possible, and
Yeah,
also link other reviews and, like, encourage people to go see what other people thought,
yeah,
because, I mean, realistically, that's what you should do anyway, is, like,
mhm.
not rely on one person for their thoughts on a book or any media really. Go and see what someone else thought about it, and does anything line up, or maybe these are just like two different tastes that don't see eye to eye. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's I think that's the answer.
I love it. So, from everything you've read so far this year,
Mhm.
what has been the standout read that you would recommend to, people watching?
um, I think Babel by R.F. Kuang might have been the book that
Okay,
hit me the hardest.
interesting.
Um, it took me a while to get through, but it was really good.
Mm,
Um, it's another one of those books where it's like I can absolutely see some people just bouncing off of it, because it does deal with a lot of very difficult topics. Um,
yes.
I'll throw in one more.
Yeah, go for
Uh,
it. We love book recs and we love destroyed TBRs.
yeah. This is probably the book that surprised me the most, because I had interviewed the author a while ago. She came out with a short story collection, and I didn't really go in with any expectations. It was just like, let's try something a little bit different. I haven't read a lot of horror. And this
Yeah,
is kind of like this collection leans toward horror. But Skin Thief by Susan Palumbo.
okay.
Um, it's very short. It's 160 pages. So I'm
Yeah,
sure some of you can probably get through it in like an afternoon. Uh, but it's a collection of short stories that they are weird and kind of gothic horror, but also like very grounded in their humanity. You
Hmm.
know, they range from stories about uh, these like shapeshifters who are trying to like just kind of make their own way, just sort of be left alone. There's a story about like this person who is like haunted by this uh, sort of angry spirit. There's a story about uh, a mermaid becoming a person and like how tragic that is to the other mermaids. Like, uh,
Mm.
it's very it's a little all over the place, but it is very concerned with the concepts of like identity,
Yeah.
and like even the language in the book changes over time from I would say almost like very westernized to using a lot of Trinidadian dialect and um, dialogue. It's because that the author is Canadian Trinidadian. Um, so yeah,
Oh,
Skin.
fascinating.
That was the one that probably has surprised me the most so far. Very good. And I'm fortunate enough, actually, to just cap this off.
Yeah.
Digital Extremities. I got Susan to say some very kind things about
Ah,
the book on the back.
I
So
love it.
yeah, no, she was so kind. When I got that review, I was just like, ah, that was
Ah.
a good book, not a paragraph.
That's fantastic, congratulations.
Yeah,
So, we were over the hour, and I realize, time is precious, so I do want to end this with thank you so much for joining me, everyone in the chat for chatting with us and listening along. But in the meantime, where can people follow you for updates, find your book, all that good stuff? And I will have links in the description. But you go ahead and tell people where they can find you.
of course. Well, thank you again so much for having me. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, but I appreciate these moments to kind of just like stop, get a chance to chat with people, and not just about the book, but about like map design and what are we reading and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. But if you would like to follow me, the best place to do that is probably through my newsletter. You can go to my website, adamcbassett.com, and you can find it through there. It's I won't update it very much. I promise not to spam your inbox. I'm guessing like once a month roughly, but like if I don't have anything interesting to say, I won't do anything that month. I've already skipped one, and it's only been live for a few months. um,
There you go.
yeah, so that's where the easiest way to get a hold of whatever's going on. If you would rather just follow me on socials, I am also at Adam C. Bassett on uh, Twitter, Instagram, Threads. So just look me up there. Same handle across all of them. Uh, I've also got a Discord.
Oh,
You can find that on the newsletter. Probably, I don't think I have it posted. It's probably like an old post somewhere. So if you prefer that, you can find me there too. I'll get you a link for the
yeah, that'd be
for
great.
yeah the description.
We'll have it down in the bottom.
Yeah. So those are all the places. If you like digital extremities, cyberpunk in the rural areas, I've got a novella in the works. I've got the map design books in the works. Uh, yeah, something's happening. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll figure it out together.
There you go. Stay tuned and keep up to date and check out Digital Extremities. Thank you so much again, Adam, for joining me. It was absolutely lovely chatting with you, hearing about all this stuff. It's fascinating for me as well because map design, I'm the one who, sits back and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty map. I just enjoy it
I do
artistically.
too.
Yeah, so hearing about all these things fascinating, and I'm definitely going to take a look at Campfire as a reader because I'm curious to see how that changes the experience.
Yeah, let me
Because
know what you think. I'd be happy
yeah,
to hear thoughts.
absolutely. But in the meantime, folks, go check out Digital Extremities. Adam, thank you again, and as always, everyone, take care of yourselves.
Yeah, thank you.